I'm Christina, a 34-year-old medical office worker. I met my husband Luke at a party hosted by mutual friends, and we instantly clicked. After dating for 2 years, we got married last year. I always dreamed of a June wedding. I felt blessed by so many people and thought we were set for a lifetime of happiness. But I never could have imagined the tragedy that was about to unfold. 6 months into our marriage, I started feeling sick in the mornings. I couldn't eat much due to nausea and fatigue. It was flu season and the hospital where I work was seeing an uptick in patients with similar symptoms. I thought maybe I'd caught something, so I took it easy for a few days, but my condition didn't improve. I decided to see an internal medicine doctor at my workplace. I initially thought it was a cold or some infection, but the doctor informed me that I was 3 months pregnant. I was shocked. What? Pregnant? I thought it was just a cold. It was my first pregnancy and I had irregular periods, so I hadn't noticed. I was genuinely happy to learn that a new life was growing inside me. I couldn't wait to share the news with Luke when I got home. He was thrilled. Awesome, Christina, I'm going to be a dad. I need to step up my game even more now. Luke is a hard-working salesman, always among the top performers. He was already doing great, but the news made him even more motivated. The next day, I shared the news with my mom and my in-laws. My father passed away years ago, and my mom currently lives with my sister and her husband. Everyone was delighted to hear about the pregnancy. My in-laws live 15 minutes away by car, and I have a good relationship with my mother-in-law, Eileen, who says, "Isn't it tough being far away from your parents' house? I'm always free, so if you need anything, feel free to let me know." Eileen's presence was reassuring for me as it was my first pregnancy and birth. When I went for checkups, I noticed many couples in the waiting room happily discussing their ultrasound images. I wanted Luke to come with me, but lately he'd been acting differently. He used to be caring, cutting his work short to help me at home, but now he was neglecting household chores and coming home drunk more often. One night past 11 p.m., Luke called, asking me to pick him up from the station. I was close to my due date and I didn't want to risk going into labor while driving. "Hey, why can't you come? I'm the breadwinner here. Get over here now." I couldn't agree with this, so I called Eileen to discuss the situation. That night, my contractions started getting stronger. Just as I was about to call the hospital, my water broke. I told Luke and Eileen what had happened. I had wanted Luke to be there for the birth, but he was too drunk and angry that Eileen had picked him up, not me. "I'm tired. I'm going to bed. You go to the hospital yourself," he said, and went straight to take a shower. Both Eileen and I were taken aback, but my water had broken, so Eileen rushed me to the hospital. Being my first childbirth, I felt vulnerable and asked Eileen to stay with me. With Eileen's help, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl just before dawn. Both Eileen and I shed tears of joy. Both the baby and I were healthy with no complications, so we were discharged as planned. We named her Lynn, and she grew up strong and healthy. While my in-laws, my mom, and my sister and her husband showered Lynn with love, Luke was a different story. He wouldn't hold our daughter, and when she cried at night, he'd say, "Shut her up, I have work tomorrow." I was shocked and broke down in tears. Our daughter was a fussy sleeper, and I was desperate for sleep. I wished he'd take over even for a short while. On his days off, he'd sleep in and then just play with his phone. I was disappointed in Luke and even considered divorce. Then, the worst happened. Out of nowhere, Luke confronted me saying, "The numbers don't add up. She's not my kid." I was stunned and couldn't comprehend what he was saying. "What are you talking about? She's definitely your child." He wouldn't listen and yelled, "Shut up, I know you married me for money." He then swung a folding chair at my head. I fell to the floor bleeding heavily and passed out. When I woke up, I was in a hospital room with Eileen and my mom, looking worried. "Christina, you're awake. Eileen told us you had collapsed." Apparently Eileen had come to my house, but got no answer at the door. She was about to leave when she heard Lynn crying inside. She found me collapsed, Lynn crying, and Luke snoring away. She tried to wake Luke up and ask him what was going on, but as usual he had been drinking a lot the day before and wouldn't wake up at all. She called an ambulance and contacted my mom. "Is Lynn okay?" I was more concerned about my daughter and asked how she was. My sister and her husband were taking care of her and she was fine. I felt relieved and started crying. I explained everything to my mom and Elaine. We decided to have a family meeting at my house after I was discharged. Of course, we didn't tell Luke. My mom, sister, and her husband and my in-laws would attend. 2 weeks later, they all showed up at our house on Luke's day off. He was shocked and jumped out of bed. What the heck, don't just barge into someone's bedroom. It's rude even for family. Call before you come. Luke was yelling, but no one paid him any mind. Everyone was giving Luke cold stares, and he finally noticed something was off. Hey, what's going on with everyone today? Did I say something to tick you off? Come on, I was just joking. Luke seemed to think his recent comment had upset everyone. He tried to lighten the mood with laughter, but no one joined in. Finally, Elaine, fed up with her son's foolishness, spoke up. Don't you have any idea why we're all here? Think hard, added Sterling, Luke's father. Luke looked bewildered, clearly not getting it. I have no clue what you're talking about. Did you all come to lecture me about my drinking? I decided to step in and explain to the clueless Luke why everyone had gathered. That's when I started to explain why Luke had suddenly turned cold towards me, why he didn't show any love for our daughter, and even why he had raised a chair against me. You're the one who got close to me for my money and got pregnant with another man's child. Why should I care for a child that's not mine? I remembered Luke saying something like this before he raised the chair against me. Of course, I've never cheated. This child is genuinely ours. Yet he thinks Lynn is a child born from an affair. I can't wrap my head around it. Hey Luke, why do you think Lynn is a child from an affair? Because the timing of Lynn's age and when you got pregnant doesn't add up. I couldn't understand what he was talking about at first. The timing of Lynn's age and pregnancy doesn't match? What does that even mean? Look, I don't get what you're saying. Can you explain it a bit more? Luke started to elaborate. You got pregnant in November, right? And you were already 3 months along. Humans are born 280 days after conception. So Lynn should have been born in July, but she was born in June. That's why I'm sure Lynn is another man's child. I couldn't believe Luke doubted my fidelity and even raised a chair against me for such a reason. Then, my sister, who was a midwife, stepped in to clarify. Listen, Luke, pregnancy is calculated from the first day of the last menstrual period, so Lynn's due date in June is accurate. Even Luke couldn't argue against my sister, who's a professional. Then Elaine pulled out an old album from her tote bag. Look closely. This is Lynn's face when she was born. Doesn't she look just like you used to? How can you say she's a child from an affair? I looked at the album too, and Lynn's eyes were indeed just like Luke's. Anyone could see she was Luke's child. Luke used to cry a lot at night as a baby. The moment you'd think he was asleep and put him in bed, he'd wake up and start crying again. And yet, he doubts me. I couldn't forgive Luke for that. After everyone tried to convince him, he finally seemed to get it. Oh, I see. I really thought Lynn was another man's child. But now that I look closely, she does look like me. Come here, Lynn. As he reached out to our daughter, I slapped his hand away. His face showed surprise. What are you doing? I'm Lynn's father. I have the right to hold her. I couldn't help but feel disgusted. Excuse me, suddenly playing the father card. I'm not letting a violent husband like you hold her. This angered him again. What are you saying? You think you can get away with this? We've just started raising a child. You plan on being this stubborn the whole time? People would just think you're a spiteful wife. What? A spiteful wife? Does he even realize what he's done to me? How much he's hurt me? As I thought about it, I felt my blood boiling. Just as I was about to raise my hand, a loud noise rang out and Luke's cheek turned red. Ow! What the heck? He was about to shout, but Sterling, who was next to him, interrupted. You haven't forgotten what you did, have you? You swung a chair at Christina's head and injured her, and you call yourself a father? Don't make me laugh. Sterling is usually a calm and smiling person, but this was the first time I've seen him so angry. It seemed they were filled with guilt and regret for what their son had done to me and our family. And yet, their son showed no remorse. Since I was standing there healthy, he probably thought the injury wasn't a big deal. Then he just keeps saying things that make me question if I'm hearing him right. Is this really the Luke I once knew? The old Luke was so kind and considerate. Where did that Luke go? I am beyond disappointed. Given what's happened, I can't be with you anymore. I'll be filing a police report and pursuing a divorce. I'll also be seeking compensation in the divorce settlement. As soon as I mentioned compensation and a police report, he suddenly panicked and asked me to reconsider. Wait a minute. Filing a police report and seeking compensation is going too far. We're family. Let's resolve this through discussion. Let's raise Lynn together, this time for real. He thinks we can still be together after all this? How pitiful. Well, no matter what he says, my mind is made up. Nothing you say will change my mind. Even Aline knows I'm considering divorce, so you can't stop me. After that, I took my daughter and went back to my parents' house to think things over. My mom said I could stay as long as I wanted, but my sister and her husband are already living there, so I can't impose forever. Once I felt more settled, I rented an apartment near my parents' house and decided to live there with my daughter. Since I filed a police report, the police came to Luke's place. After questioning, he confessed to what he had done and was taken to the police station. In Luke's absence, Aline paid the compensation, and it was a significantly higher amount than expected. It was hard to say goodbye to Aline, who had been so good to us. For my daughter, Aline is her grandma, so I asked Aline if she could still visit my daughter occasionally. Tears flowed from her eyes as she said, "We're so sorry our son has caused you both so much pain." She apologized over and over, and it made me feel guilty because it wasn't her fault. Even after that, we continued to keep in touch with Aline. My daughter is growing day by day, and she's now even toddling around. We recently went shopping for her first pair of shoes with Aline, and I was looking forward to taking her to the park in them. Then one day, I got a call from an unknown number on my mobile phone. At first, I thought it was a wrong number, but when it kept ringing, I finally answered. The person on the other end was none other than my ex-husband, Luke. "It's been a while, Christina. How's Lynn?" I couldn't fathom why he'd go to the trouble of changing his phone number just to call me. "What do you want? We're strangers now. Can you please never contact me again?" Just as I was about to hang up, he'd interrupted. "Wait, please, hear me out. I got fired because of what happened, and I'm struggling to find a new job. I have no savings, and I can't make ends meet. Can you help me?" Since the incident, not only has he lost his job, but it seems like even his family has abandoned him. No one is willing to help him. So he's turned to me as a last resort, but I have no intention of helping. Calling me is just a nuisance. No one wants to help someone who did what you did. You're an adult. Figure it out yourself. Hearing this, Luke, who had been relying on me, started to panic. "Please, I'm begging you. Just a little help will do. $5,000 is enough. I'm running low on funds and can't even afford food for tomorrow. I apologize for what happened. Please, don't abandon me." He pleaded almost in tears. But an apology won't erase the emotional scars he's left on me. I wish he wouldn't make such careless remarks. Fed up, I hung up the phone and blocked his number. To avoid any more calls, I changed my phone number. I told Aline my new number but made it clear she should never give it to Luke. Well, Aline has also changed her number, so there's no chance Luke will contact her. As for what happened to Luke, he managed to find a live-in job, but it's tougher than he thought, and he seems to be struggling mentally. Well, maybe this is a good lesson for him. I hope he's learned his lesson and won't repeat the same mistakes.